Hi, I'm Nathan Osman. It has become increasingly evident that we need to listen to our Constitution. This powerful documentary by Pepper Films addresses amazing heads-up facts taken directly from the Constitution of the United States of America. You're about to witness candid interviews with politicians that may shock you. Furthermore, you will learn that there exists a natural resource found within the bounds of our Constitution that would eliminate our federal debt and all taxation, even without cutting government spending. The original intent of this film was for personal reasons. However, because the content was so good, Pepper Films was created with the intent of bringing it to life. We hope that you find this film both informative and enlightening. Thanks for watching.
Shannon.
All right, thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Jake Shannon. Today, we've got a wonderful in-studio guest. His name is Arlan Brunson. Maybe you've heard of him. Maybe you've checked out his website, theoathofoffice.com. Now, if you go there, you could see he's actually approached some rather notable politicians about their particular view on the oath of office. And so I'm really thrilled to have him here. So he keeps telling me he's got some big announcement, too, that he's going to unveil on the show. So I want to welcome Arlan to the show.
Jake, it's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah,
can you hear me okay? I don't have a headset on, so.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, everything's good. So so you brought in a bunch of stuff here. I want people who don't know who you are to describe, give them your kind of elevator pitch. Who are you, Arlan Brunson? Who are you?
I'm just a regular guy that decided to get involved in politics. I've always, for quite a few years, just kind of hated the thought of getting involved in politics. But I guess I heard the mention of the Constitution one too many times on TV, and I decided, well, I better read that document again. It's been such a long time. So I got it out, and I was reading along, and it was a little difficult to understand. The first article, the second article, I get to Section 2, last paragraph, and it stunned me. The President of the United States swore to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. And it stunned me even more as I continued to read other articles and clauses and amendments and the Declaration of Independence. I could not believe it. I had no idea that we were so out of touch in Washington with the Constitution.
And the oath of office, I mean, it's not just the president. I mean, senators, police officers, military, they all
every
swear.
Federal and state employee. And we as citizens also have an implied oath. As, of course, the new immigrants coming over and becoming citizens, they have to swear pretty much the same thing to support the Constitution. But we as citizens, natural-born or born citizens of the United States, have the same obligation to support and protect and preserve and understand and study the Constitution.
So what's the problem with these state employees, at what level, from all the way up to the president down to the bottom guy taking this oath? What has happened?
Well, it's quite scary. Our founders have said that we will lose our liberties if we are not educated. If we fell in the education department, we will lose them. Now, the Second Amendment, to me, is not just about guns. It's about education. Because if you go to Article 1, Section 8 and read about the militia, and one of the purposes for the militia is to protect the states, but it's also to defend the laws of the Union, which is the Constitution. So Article 1, Section 8 also gives Congress the power to raise money to discipline the militia to defend the Constitution, which means, to me, education. So Congress really has failed ever since, I think, the beginning.
It's almost been the beginning. I mean, I know that, right now it's been extremely popular. Everybody, like you, like me, everybody's talking about the Constitution and Founding Fathers, but they don't realize, even the Whiskey Rebellion, that was right away under George Washington.
Yeah.
And he actually sent out people. He sent out because of people. I think give the Founding Fathers a pass. There were bad guys like Alexander Hamilton.
There definitely were, but there's some brilliant stuff, as you know. I tell people, when you study the Constitution, start first with the second clause in the Declaration of Independence. These truths are self-evident, that we have unalienable rights from our Creator. And then go over to the Ninth Amendment, which says even the Constitution cannot be interpreted or construed in a way to deny or disparage the rights of the people. Once you have a grasp of that, then you can read the Constitution with correct interpretation, and that is to protect the rights of the people. If you read the Constitution with an interpretation interpretation that gives government more power and deprives the people of their rights, you're misinterpreting the Constitution.
Yeah, and it's scary because what I love is your passion for this. I'm just curious, how many of our elected officials, how many of them actually know the Constitution and actually, understand the severity with which that oath, the ramifications of taking that oath? I don't think they do.
It's frightening how many even remember what the oath is. I interviewed all the candidates for U.S. Senate last year, and I interviewed the main candidate with the major party, the Democrat Party. I'm not going to mention any names, but he did not know what the oath was.
Well, okay, so here it is. You're being very nice. I don't have to be. His name is Sam Granado. I'm going to play because you do have the actual interview, so it's
true.
not just hearsay. You actually have it.
Yes.
So I want to play this. I want, if you know a politician, if you are a politician and you happen to be listening, we're on to you. So there's guys like Arlan out there who are going to hold you accountable. Guys like me on this radio show talking to I don't know, what is it, 20,000 people?
To do it. Everyone needs to ask, what is the oath of office to their candidates and their representatives?
Okay, so let me play this clip. Again, you can find the clips. You've got, you said all the major candidates you talked to. You had Mike Lee, you had Sam Granado, you had Scott Bradley.
You'll have to go to YouTube for that because it's not going to be on the website yet. Do a YouTube search for BBMG Video News, all one word.
Well, I see them right here at the oath of office.
There are three, but
three of them.
All the rest are on
YouTube.
Oh,
so you have more even.
Yes.
Wow.
Wayne Allen Root, he was the presidential candidate at one time for the Libertarian Party. I've interviewed him about it, too.
Yeah. Wayne Allen Root is certainly a controversial figure within the Libertarian Party.
He has it right, though, in many ways.
In many ways he does. In many ways, I think he thinks that the Libertarian Party is the Republican Party light. And insofar as that, it's a little hinky, but I want to get to Sam Granado here. Let's play this clip here.
Just a couple of questions. First is the theme sort of is the oath of office. Could you tell, a lot of viewers don't even know what the oath of office is. Could you kind of explain to them what it is?
Well, the oath of office is I'm taking that office for the 3 million of the best constituents of the state of Utah, and I represent them. The seat does not belong to the individual. It belongs to the people, and I will represent that seat and the people of Utah and bring a consensus together.
Okay, that sounds pretty good. It seems that there are some
typical political answer. I mean, gosh,
groups or some parties seem to they sort of brag that they understand the Constitution better than other parties. How do you feel about that?
Well, they can brag all they want. I believe we all love the Constitution. We all know what needs to be done. They can brag about the Constitution, but what about loving your neighbor or helping people in need? That's what I'm about. I'm for bringing groups together. I'm the guy that will win on November 2nd, and I need your help and everyone else's support.
Well, it seems that the Constitution is for that purpose, to love each other and to all be united and everything together. So maybe you have a better, a better foundation or a better belief in the Constitution than some other folks that we won't mention.
At this point, it's funny to watch because you could just see that he realizes you're not leaving the question of the Constitution.
We'll mention. What do you think?
Why don't we just say my belief is I was raised in a Democratic household. I was taught to share and to take care of those in need. And if that all falls under the Constitution, I don't want to wear the Constitution on my sleeve. I'm here. I'm a business owner. I'm in public service, all because of the Constitution. I am who I am and live within these borders, and I'm very blessed to do so. So I'm going to take what's in the Constitution and live it in my daily life. And even when I go to church, I'm going to remember it. But as you just brought up, they like...
So he said that he's going to remember it when he's in church, but what about when he's not in church? I mean, I'm not sure that he actually remembers anything about the Constitution.
You need to read it first before you can remember it.
Right. Yeah, this is fascinating. I'll play more from I don't want to subject our listeners to any more of that. I mean, I was getting lost. It made no sense what he was even saying. He certainly was fumbling about.
Well, I asked him if when he was a child, if he was forced to share his toys or was allowed the free choice. He says, my mother would never force me. She taught me to share. And it's like, well, then why should we be forced?
Yeah, it's strange because I think that a lot of the values that are in the Constitution, I think people just default. I think because, like you were saying, it's self-evident. I think it is part of human nature. and then they go and try to mess it all up. I mean, what? I just don't get
People
it.
don't realize that the Constitution provides for the foundation for charity, and it promotes charity. It builds charity through charitable giving of one's own free will, but it provides an economic environment where that can happen and flourish. And when that's taken away, the charities dwindle, like the church hospitals have dwindled.
Now, so if you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Arlan Brunson. He has a website that you should check out. It's oathofoffice.com, theoathofoffice.com. Check it out, and there's some very interesting videos. You also have this DVD. So tell me a little bit about the DVD. We're bumping up against our commercial. We got about a minute and a half, but tell listeners a little bit about this Oath of Office.
Well, the DVD was all the candidates of all parties, and that went to all the state delegates, and it was available to other people as well last year. But all 3,400 state GOP delegates got it a week before the convention, which was quite a feat because we didn't have our last interview done until a day before we sent it out.
Oh, wow. Wow. And so, yeah, this is absolutely fascinating. You've even got Newt Gingrich on here.
I was at a press conference with Senator Bob Bennett. Newt Gingrich, and Senator Bennett was asked the question by me about the oath of office, and his answer ended up on Fox TV 13 News.
Wow.
And then Connor took that and put it on a YouTube site. He titled it, Bob Bennett Doesn't Want to Honor His Oath of Office.
Ah.
And one of the last questions I asked Senator Bennett was, did you swear or affirm when you took the oath? And he says, I'm not going to answer that question.
So
wow.
again, evoking the Fifth Amendment right to non-disclosure, but not really. No, like wow. Ah, man, we are in a pickle. Well, I'm glad you're doing this. Again, so check it out, theoathofoffice.com. We're bumping up against our commercial break here in any minute, but I want you to stay tuned because you have some announcement. Is that right?
Yes, I do.
You have a big announcement, okay, and you're breaking it on my show.
That's right.
I love it. This will be the second big announcement that we've broken in the last couple of weeks here. Stay tuned. I'm your host, Jake Shannon. We have in studio today Arlan Brunson. He is a kindred spirit. He's a rabble-rouser. He's getting out and stirring up some trouble in a good way. Going and actually talking to these guys that pretend to represent you up in Washington, D.C., or maybe even at the have you done any local politicians, like not federal level employee,
No,
like
I haven't.
Senate
Not at
or
the
anything?
state level, no. I interviewed Senator Hatch a few weeks ago. And
You had Hatch.
Yes.
And how'd that go?
It went really well.
Yeah, did he know what the oath was?
Well, I said, what is the oath? And he says, well, it's what we promise to do in keeping the principles of the Constitution of our government. So he was sort of quoting Article 6, but he wasn't really saying what the oath was, to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution.
Now,
so
did
I'm
he
sure he knows, but he didn't seem. No one's asking the question, so it wasn't on the tip of his tongue like it should be.
Now I know to DJ Shands, who subs for me when I'm gone, and to Darcy Van Orton, who has again he said to them that he was the co-author of the Patriot Act or something. So I'm pretty sure that maybe even if he does know the oath of office, I guess it makes it even worse if he knows the Constitution and he claims to have be the architect of the Patriot Act.
Well, you might be able to find that, but yeah, Senator Hatch says I try to keep the oath, and then later on in the interview he says, well, the oath is very important to me, and I says, well, Article 6 also states that you should be bound by the oath, and how are you bound by the oath? And he says, well, we lose the election if we don't keep the oath, and it's like, I don't think that's true.
That's totally not true.
I don't think that's happening.
I mean, Bush got elected twice.
A lot of people get reelected, and they don't keep the oath.
Wow.
But he says there are other members of Congress and the Senate that don't keep the oath. But he says he thinks for the most part they try to keep the oath. And I would like to just see if they remember what it is.
Well, so you've got all this great stuff up. If people want to check it out, theoathofoffice.com. Again, your name is Arlan Brunson. Stop teasing people. What is this big announcement, Arlan?
Okay, well, I'm going to run for U.S. Senate as a Republican.
So you're running.
Yes.
As Republican?
Yes.
So essentially, you'll be running against Hatch.
Yes, and hopefully it'll do some good. If Hatch would take the position of the most important problem that needs to be addressed in America, which is the Federal Reserve, here is a private corporation creating money out of thin air. They create trillions, and they own it when they create it.
So we actually have the option now, right now. That you haven't mentioned this on any other show.
No, this is it.
So you are officially running.
That's my
as
statement.
a senator. Okay,
Yes.
okay, good.
Yes.
Well, man, that's awesome. So we had your friend Bill Still make the announcement on my show, and now you're making the announcement. So people actually on the menu have a real chance to have somebody, for example, that's critical, not only understands the Constitution, but that additionally is critical of the Federal Reserve.
Well, if you're going to fly a 747 and you've never done it before, but you've flown small planes, are you going to create your own rules and your own instruction manual? Are you going to get to the blueprints of the machine of the plane and follow that? And
that's the thing that I like about Bill Still too, is that he raises some very good points about that the Federal Reserve is totally not in the Constitution at all. It's the Treasury is in the Constitution.
It's absolutely opposite. The Federal Reserve is the biggest enemy to the United States and the Constitution in that they create the money that they loan, and they don't give it to Congress. They loan it. So these guys, every time they loan $1 trillion to Congress, it's a $1 trillion net profit for the shareholders.
Yeah, they get seniorage where they make money.
They own it plus the interest. It's the principal, and people don't realize that they're creating money. And what have they been buying since 1913 with these hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars? They who knows what they own? We have no idea because we can't even audit them. We have the majority of the House and the Senate that protect their identities and protect what they have created and spent and loaned.
Well,
That's
obviously, really the only guy right now in Congress really fighting for that is obviously Ron Paul, who's been fighting.
But there are about 17 members of the U.S. Senate that have signed on to that, and there's 150 members of Congress or more that have signed on to a real audit.
But had that not been happening, had people not been raising a stink like this,
been in the forefront.
We only got a little bit of the information as to during the bailout that we bailed out all these foreign banks.
Well, people are really confused. They think that the Federal Reserve is part of the government, and they've got to realize that no, it's a private bank. It's a money factory, and they create money. They own every penny that they create, and so that's important for people to realize.
Okay, so you are running for Senate. Yes. Obviously, you've given this some thought. You've hopefully cleared it with your family and everything else.
Well, I don't have a wife and kids, so.
So tell me, what is the platform that you're running on? Obviously, you're strong on the economy.
A couple of platforms. So one is the oath of office. We need to realize that we all have sworn to uphold something that we better darn well understand. We better read it and understand. Our founding fathers, whether there's a God or not, it doesn't change the fact that the foundation of this great country is based on a belief in God, and most of them recognize some divine intervention.
Yeah, some were Christian, some were deists.
They were saying things and writing things that they felt they were not capable of writing and reading. So we've got to get back to that. We have to understand. It's basically the 8th commandment. What's the 8th commandment? It's thou shalt not steal. You can't steal from someone to give to someone else. It's against the Constitution.
So if you were a senator, would you support legislation to repeal the 16th Amendment?
I believe the 16th Amendment is already nullified by the 9th. If you go to the Declaration of Independence, you'll see these rights are unalienable. They cannot be taken. And if the Constitution, no matter what the amendments say, can only be interpreted in a way that doesn't deprive or disparage the rights of the people. So in my mind, the 9th Amendment actually has already nullified any compromise of the people's rights, which would include the 16th.
Yeah, the challenge is, because, there's other arguments against the 16th, like it was actually never ratified. Here in Utah, we could be proud at least that back then Utah didn't vote to ratify it. And there's some convincing arguments either way, but the problem is they still have guns in jails and make awful examples out of people and things like that, despite those kind of things. So I do think that it's almost like prohibition. Prohibition was unconstitutional. That's why they had to pass an amendment. But then they had to pass another amendment to get rid of it. Would you, in fact, if there were people on that trail to pass an amendment, despite the 9th Amendment argument, would you still support an amendment to the Constitution to get rid of?
I wouldn't support an amendment.
IRS?
I wouldn't support a constitutional convention. I would support a nullification process. That's what I would support.
Okay,
I would
so
support a better
9th and 10th
understanding of the
Amendment
Constitution. Absolutely. The 9th Amendment is the heart of the document. It's the purification of the document. To me, it is the document. You shall not take the Constitution and interpret it in a way to deprive or disparage the rights of the people.
Yeah.
That's it.
Interesting perspective. So obviously the economy, the oath of office. What other kind of things?
The biggest problem in this country, and I hate to rehash this,
it's okay,
but the Federal Reserve. If the federal government took over the Federal Reserve and made it federal, there would be no need for any federal taxes. When the government comes into existence, it creates a resource. It's almost like a natural resource. But what is that resource? The power to create money. And when a government does not have the power to create money, it's no longer the government. Whoever's creating the money and owns it when it's created is the government. If our Congress took back that power, there would be no need for federal tax. They would create the money as it is needed. And I even see a clear way to zero interest mortgages on all homeowners. The government could allow that to happen, and it would be totally constitutional.
So then you tend to agree then, I'm guessing, with Bill Still's argument then that not necessarily a gold standard is the best, but actually putting the money to coin currency back with Congress.
I believe Article 1, Section 10, the gold standard was to curb counterfeiting. But I don't think it's necessary. If we can curb counterfeiting and take the power back to create money, but that created a problem. President Kennedy's, signed an executive order to end the Federal Reserve, and he started issuing United States note dollars. But the problem was he had to back it with silver coins because of Article 1, Section 10. Well, if he had taken the position that was just to prevent counterfeiting and had the control over it, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in today, and we wouldn't have a national debt, and there would be no income tax, even if we had the current spending.
Yeah, it's scary because almost every single president that has gone against central banking has had either an assassination attempt or actually been assassinated. From Andrew Jackson to Warren G. Harding to Lincoln to Kennedy.
That's right.
To
Andrew
Reagan.
Jackson. It was Andrew Jackson's platform to end the central bank, and John F. Kennedy didn't come out and say, hey, the Federal Reserve is what it is. He didn't come out and do that. I wish he had.
Well, we used to have it. I mean, the good thing that Jackson had going for him was that corporate charters weren't indefinite, that they ended after 20 years or whatever it was, and he just didn't renew it.
That's true. But a charter that violates the Ninth Amendment or violates the rights of the people that are unalienable is an illegal charter.
Yeah, this is fascinating stuff. So, again, if you're just tuning in, we just... breaking news, Arlan Brunson has announced he is seeking the nomination for the Republican Party for the federal Senate position for U.S. Senate. So he will be running against... Now, obviously, we know Hatch is running.
Yes.
Who else is running for that?
I'm not sure. I can't name any names. But I hate to hear the word against. I think we ought to get united and visit and talk and discuss and get together.
Yeah, but they don't want to. I mean, I can look at these videos you posted, and they don't want to talk about what they don't know about.
Well, we need to try to do it. And if I win the election and I go to Washington, D.C., I'm going with a camera crew and in a very nice way, a loving way, remind my fellow representatives that we have an obligation. We have a contract. And if we violate the contract, I can show you how it's really treason. If we give aid and comfort to enemies of the United States, enemies of the Constitution, which the Federal Reserve is doing, if we support them and if we protect their privacy, we are committing treason. Now, Congress has given the power to declare the penalties for treason. They've been given that power, and they have already declared it. The lower treason is a minimum of 5 years in prison, a $10,000 fine, and being barred from holding public office the rest of your life. And that's Congress' declaration.
But we're not. The problem is, here's my problem as kind of a libertarian, and I'm more philosophical than I am political. But it seems like we pass all these laws, and nobody listens to them.
People, that's what you said, listening. People have got to get the Constitution out, and they should, with a pen, they should read it until things pop out at them. And there are some very clear things there. One sentence, one very incredible bits of information that will become a tool for them to fight for their rights. And that's what it is, a fight for rights.
Now, again, so if you just tuned in, we're speaking with Arlan Brunson. Check out his website, theoathofoffice.com. If you have questions for him, he is now officially throwing his hat in. He's going to run for U.S. Senate in competition for the seat with Orrin Hatch and whoever else is going there. So if you want to call, you're open to talking to people and whatnot, right? So those call-in numbers 801-254-5855 and 801-670-5855, and then as an inducement. This is not a bribe, it's an ethical bribe. If you call in, you've also, tell me about this. So you obviously do a lot of stuff in media. I love what you said about the cameras, because our time is different than the Founding Fathers now, mostly because of technology.
Oh, everyone. I started this just by my brother picking up a camera.
But the great thing is I think what the Founding Fathers had to do with a gun can be done with a camera, like with what you're saying. Actually, here you go.
Absolutely.
Here's what you're saying on
Get
record.
Get your camcorder. go and see your representatives, go and see the candidates, and just, if it's just one question, hey, what is the oath of office?
Well,
if it's just that is a powerful thing to do.
But I want to bribe people. If they call in, you gave me this CD here, Brunson Brothers. What is that? What's going on?
I'm in a group with my brothers. We play music, and that's a Christmas CD we did. Jay Osmond's singing the first cut. It's more jazz-oriented. We know some great jazz musicians, so we just sort of took it a jazz direction.
Okay, cool. So anybody that calls in, we're going to give you a copy of that.
Yeah, I think Vinny Colaiuta's playing on that. He toured with Sting for quite a long time on drums. So we have some class.
We've got some people calling in. Again, those numbers 801-254-5855 in Salt Lake County, 801-670-5855 elsewhere throughout Utah. We're speaking with Arlan Brunson. Just declared on my show that he is running for Senate as a Republican. He certainly knows the Constitution. I'm grilling him here, and he's got an answer for everything. So, and he's open. You know, he will talk to you, and he wants to get the best information out there, get people educated about the Constitution, all that kind of stuff. And again, as an ethical bribe, leave your name and number with my producer, and we'll leave you a CD of this Christmas CD. I mean, really couldn't be better timing, huh?
We're almost there, aren't we? A little early.
So tell me a little bit while we're waiting for my producer to type in the stuff from the callers. What is your background? I mean, where did you come from? You know, you clearly have thought these issues out, and I liked how you opened up. You said, I'm just a normal guy, but, you know, where did you come from?
That's really it. I've just maybe sort of a free spirit. I think I represent a lot of people that are they're fed up, they feel frustrated, they feel taken advantage of, they feel like something is wrong in Washington, but they can't quite put their finger on it. And that's how I felt until I started reading the Constitution. And then, of course, Bill Still's Money Masters, the first 10 minutes of that is incredible, letting us know that the Federal Reserve is not federal. It's a bank, it's a private bank, and they create money out of thin air, and they own it before they loan it, and they own it before they spend it. How much have they been spending since 1913 that we have no clue
It's about? Exciting because I think guys like Bill Still, like Ron Paul, like yourself, are out there waking people up.
There is a movement.
I've never seen it. I've never seen people. I've been libertarian for over 20 years, and I've never seen people as open to the arguments. You know, because people used to be like, oh, you're a kook. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but this Nobel laureate says the same thing. This Nobel laureate says the same thing. But now you don't get that reaction. People are actually open to it. I mean, heck, you got tea parties, you got Occupy.
That's right.
Okay, hey, people on the line, I will take you immediately after this commercial break. We're speaking with Arlan Brunson, who is now seeking the Senate seat for the Republicans here in Utah. Come on back. KTALK, Voice of Utah. All right, welcome back. Mental Self-Defense Radio, speaking with Arlan Brunson. Now, threw his hat in the ring. He's going to run for U.S. Senate, not state Senate, U.S. Senate. Anybody who calls in, leave your name and information with Steph, my producer, and we will get you a copy of this awesome Christmas album, Brunson Brothers, 'Tis the Season. So you said Jay Osmond sung on it. You had a drummer that was a drummer for Sting. We've got these callers who've been very patiently holding. So let's bring them in. Hi, you're on the air. Can you speak up into the phone a little bit? Can hardly hear you.
Oh, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, that's good. So you're on the air with Arlan Brunson. How's it going?
Great.
Do you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to give you and Arlan a heads up that I was a state delegate last year, and Hatch is already having his people call state delegates and query and find out who they're planning on voting for, and if they're going to be a state delegate next year, if they're planning on that. And I think he's trying to consolidate his support, right? You know.
I mean, he's done this a time or two, so he knows what needs to be done. Whether he's the right guy for the job or not is a different question. But I mean, he's done this plenty of times, so he kind of knows what to do, I think.
Right, but that's going to be really tough for anyone else to get in if he doesn't have the delegates that are going to be able to vote for him.
That's right, they decide.
So what's the best way, in your opinion, Betsy, given your experience being a delegate, how could somebody like Arlan, who really wants to provide an alternative, a constitutional alternative, what's the best way, do you think, to make that known to you guys that he even exists?
I know, that's such a...
Did I stump you?
such an awesome question.
Okay, Betsy, look, I'm going to ask you to think about that and come up with a good answer and call back, because I think you raised a very good question.
Did you get my DVD last year? Were you a state delegate in the last state convention?
Yes.
So you did get it?
Yes.
Okay, all the state delegates got it. So some of them know who I am already, and I need to focus. You're right. I do need to focus on the state delegates.
Yeah, you really do need to.
Yes.
And also, I'm just going to put a heads up for everyone out there. I think more people need to go to the original meetings.
The precinct meetings, yes.
Yeah, the precinct meetings.
Yeah,
where
take 10 friends, become a state delegate.
Yeah,
definitely.
You're going to need to take, I think you might need to take more friends this year, more people that are freedom-loving people who believe in the Constitution, because I think there's going to be a lot more opposition, you might say.
That's right. You take 20 friends, you will become a state delegate. I believe that.
Yeah, but
at the precinct meetings.
Yeah, last year you could do it with less, but this year I think more people really need to get involved, at least to go to the original meetings, and make sure you get somebody in your precinct that supports the view of freedom.
Yes.
Hey, Betsy, anything else you want to add? We got other callers in the queue.
No, I think that's great.
You're on the air with Arlan Brunson. How are you today?
Hi, this is Lee.
Yeah, hi, Lee.
I want to ask him, what is the purpose of the oath of office?
The purpose of the oath of office is to bind our representatives to the Constitution. Not only are they bound to support it, but they're bound to preserve and protect and defend it. So that's the purpose. Article 6 in the Constitution says that our representatives, our congressmen, our representatives are supposed to be bound by the oath. Our representatives are supposed to be doing things that bind themselves to the oath, and I don't think that's happening.
The problem is, what does the Constitution represent? That's the big problem.
If you want to know, just read the second clause in the Declaration of Independence and then go to the Ninth Amendment, and you'll know. It's about unalienable rights. Unalienable means rights cannot be taken. They are the permanent rights.
Lee, so you heard Arlan speaking about the Constitution. I don't know if have you been to his website, theoathofoffice.com yet?
No, I have not been there, but I was just traveling along, and I felt that it was important that we come to realize that the purpose of the government is not to control the people, but to protect the people. And the ones we have to be protected are the money changers who...
That's right. You got it right there. You know, I've talked with some legislative assistants, and I've actually talked to Senator Hatch's Tax Policy Council. And I'm sorry to say this, they are so busy with so many other things, they don't even realize that the Federal Reserve, when they create $1 trillion, it's their property. They don't realize that. They don't realize that the government's not loaning money to itself. Think about it. You can't loan money to yourself and be in debt. So you're dead on about the money changers. That's why we had the Revolutionary War. I believe that was a big part of the Civil War, and that's our big problem today. The money changers have got to be stopped. The power of creating money has to be given back to Congress, and then we have to replace the House and the Senate with constitutionally sound, honest people.
The problem we have is Hatch and all Bennett and Garn, all of them here were the ones that brought down our monetary system and caused the collapse, because they were the ones that did away with Glass-Steagall.
That's right, and we can't get that back. We can't recover from that until we understand what the problem is. Like you said, it's the Federal Reserve. We've got to understand the nature of the Federal Reserve. They're creating money out of thin air, and they own it when they create it. And most people think that the government owns it when it's created. No, they own it.
Okay, thanks, Lee. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. We've got David very patiently holding. David in Murray, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jake. Arlan, I own a gay gun club in Utah, and I wanted to know how you believe the 9th and 10th Amendments affect the matter of gay marriage.
You know, my focus right now is on the biggest problem in America, and I think we're getting so sidetracked with so many other issues. We've got to first understand where money comes from. We have to understand that the money created is owned by the people creating it. We've got to solve that problem first, and I'm going to focus on the most important matters at hand before I talk about other issues.
So it would be fair to say that for you, it's really not part of your platform. It doesn't mean you're pro or con. You just probably haven't really weighed in on it or thought too much. Your focus is on monetary issues.
I haven't prepared a statement about that.
Yeah. I don't know what else to tell you, David.
Let me tell you one more thing. I've been doing some study about gay marriage, and it looks like that there are evidences that their rights are being violated of men and women with gay marriage. So that needs to be explored more so people can really see, is that going to increase the rights of the people, or is that going to compromise your rights.
Does that,
so we
does
need
that
to
help
do more
you, David?
exploring with that, especially when it comes to children and marriages and divorces.
Okay.
So, but do you understand the creation of money? Get that first. That's so important. That's going to affect everyone, and that's a message for all people, no matter who you are. You've got to understand there's a private corporation creating trillions, and when they create $1 trillion, it's their property. That has got to stop. That power's got to be given back to the government. It'll wipe out the national debt. It'll eliminate the need for all federal taxes, and it'll zero out your mortgage interest rates, and it'll have an incredible effect on the economy.
Well, I'm with the idea that the Constitution is the biggest arbiter of our economy. It ought to be anyway. I also believe that the Constitution doesn't end right there, that the Ninth and Tenth Amendments, as you've been talking about, give to the states and to the people certain rights that aren't enumerated.
Let me just mention something. The Constitution does not give us rights. The Constitution protects the rights that are self-evident. The 10th talks about states' rights. The 9th reaffirms the fact that it's the Constitution or no
that it's
document.
not just the ones that we're listing here.
Right.
There's a whole host of them.
That's right. Absolutely. I'm for people's rights.
So, David, where are you at? I'm sorry if we keep interrupting you.
No, that sounds good.
If people of the same sex want to get married and it doesn't violate anyone else's rights in any way, they should have a right to go do that. But if it violates other people's rights, then there's a problem. So that needs to be addressed.
How would it violate anyone's rights?
That's something that needs to be explored.
How does heterosexual marriage violate anyone's rights?
That's something that needs to be studied.
You think that the low-hanging fruit is this problem with the fact that nobody understands the Constitution first, and second, that nobody is really dealing with this 500-pound gorilla that is the Federal Reserve.
Right, and it can be understood. People don't realize how simple it is. It really can be understood. It's like if your basement were flooding, would you bring in a bunch of people with little sponges from the grocery store? No. You would shut off the water, and that's what needs to happen.
It is what needs to happen. Okay, come on back. We're heading into our long break, second hour of Mental Self-Defense Radio. We've got Arlan Brunson with us. We're going to listen to some of those interviews in the second hour, and then the Boyack Review. Come on back. KTALK, the voice of Utah.
No one here gets out alive.
All right, welcome back. Mental Self-Defense Radio. I'm your host, Jake Shannon. We are speaking with Arlan Brunson. He is running for Senate. He announced it on this show. And, any callers, so you're a musician as well, right?
Yes.
So any callers that call in, if you want some good Christmas tunes to play in your CD player, the Brunson brothers, again, Jay Osmond, sings on one of the tracks,
right? On the first track, yes.
And then you said one of the guys, what's his name again?
Vinny Colaiuta. He toured a long time with Sting as a drummer. We have some great musicianship on that. Jamie Glazer's on that too. He's been on the cover of Guitar Player magazine. And
we don't have a whole lot of time, but maybe address your view on first the separation of church and state.
I'd like to hear the question. What was the question?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know specifically because he hung up, but I know that he brought it up.
There's church and then there's religion, belief in God. If we go to the second clause in the Declaration, I've mentioned before, it says these truths are self-evident, that we have unalienable rights from our Creator. So that's the foundation. That's the foundational document that led to the Constitution. And the Ninth Amendment says that the rights shall not be deprived or disparaged, even with the document, even with the Constitution. So as far as the separation of church and state, well, we see God also mentioned in the first clause of the Declaration of Independence. So we're not talking about religion. We're not talking about a specific church.
Yeah, you're not saying you got to be Catholic or Presbyterian or LDS or anything like that.
Exactly.
It's just spirituality or something.
Right, exactly. So my understanding is that the Constitution was to protect the church from the churches and religion from government.
This merger, if we have a separation of church and state, why don't we, to protect, as you say, the churches, why don't we have a separation of corporations or businesses or banking and state?
Well, and these corporations, who purchased them? Are they owned by the shareholders of the Federal Reserve? Have they been purchasing corporations since 1913? Do they really own the media?
1913, we had some pretty scary stuff happen to the Constitution.
Yes, at least 3 horrible things happened. One is Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act. He promised in his campaign that he would sign that based on campaign financing from the bankers. Another thing happened that was horrible too, and that is the 17th Amendment, which took the states' rights away from recalling their representatives. And then there was one more thing that happened, the 16th Amendment.
And we all know
those
what
three
that
things,
is.
Yeah. So what has happened? Who profits from those three things? The Federal Reserve shareholders. Those guys are trillionaires. They claim to be nonprofit, but if you study it a little bit, the banks, the Federal Reserve banks claim to be nonprofit. Even the Federal Reserve claims that they give all their profits to the Treasury. They give everything, they give all of the interest back to the Treasury except for their operating expenses. But it's like, hey, wait a second. What about the principal? Now, in 1913, the Federal Reserve, a private corporation, really, they were just loaning their gold and silver to Congress. So it wasn't a profit except for the interest. But in the 70s, Nixon and Congress allowed them to stop backing their notes, those Federal Reserve notes that they were creating.
Whatever they wanted.
Exactly. So it all became pure profit. You could look at this as a major bookkeeping error. Nixon and Congress forgot to tell the Federal Reserve shareholders, the bankers, that, well, you're not nonprofit anymore because every Federal Reserve note dollar that is out there that you don't have to redeem now is pure profit, and that should be subject to changing your nonprofit status.
See, this is something that I think is crucially important. I think there are people like Bill Still or Ron Paul. There's a lot of people that think that this is such a core, serious issue to end the Federal Reserve, to get back to the Constitution. Why? What is the stumbling block for most people? I mean, it's boring. It's complicated.
Well,
what is it?
I was hoping you could help. I think we have been brainwashed. See, since 1913, we have been believing that the Federal Reserve is part of the government. That we've just been brought up that way. Well, what?
You use the word federal, and all of a sudden people are like,
exactly.
"Oh, here you go, sir. No
problem."
problem.
What would you do if you were part of a group of people and you had unlimited spending capability with unlimited money? What would you buy? Well, you'd buy your protection first. You'd buy politicians. You'd buy publishing houses. You would buy media. You would buy everything you could buy to protect yourself.
That's the thought experiment I usually try to use, actually, to get people to break through. Like, imagine that you had a magic printing press and you could just make as much money as you wanted.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you then, you could buy politicians, you could buy countries, you could buy entire militaries. And that's what's happened.
That's right. Ron Paul says
it's the biggest scam put over on people.
Yes, people have got to realize it's no one. If you had a money tree, like you said, in your backyard, would you believe an economist, even if he had a PhD, that the money was created on your tree was a liability and was debt and not an asset?
Right.
But yet we've all become believers that the government creates money. Whenever they create money, we have to loan it to ourselves, and then we have a debt. Ron Paul says $1.6 trillion of the national debt is fictitious, and he says because we borrowed it from someone that created it out of nothing, why should we have to pay it back?
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things that he's introduced is that idea of writing down that debt. Just toast.
Well, another thing that's bizarre, Ron Paul says that China has 35 trillion United Federal Reserve note dollars in the bank. It's like, wait a minute, we haven't had that much trade with China. And then if we look into it a little bit, there is enough disclosure with the Federal Reserve, we will see that the Federal Reserve has been loaning money to China. How much did they loan them? $35 trillion? And at what interest rate? I have something to say that might be new.
What's that?
And that is in Article 3, Section 3, two people can go to the Attorney General's office or to law enforcement and file a complaint for treason. Article 3, Section 3 defines treason as giving aid and comfort to enemies of the Constitution.
And there are good guy sheriffs out there. We've had like Sheriff Mack on the show.
We have the majority of Congress that are protecting the biggest enemy. They are giving aid and comfort to the Federal Reserve by not allowing them to be audited. That is treason.
All right, welcome back, Mental Self-Defense Radio. I'm Jake Shannon. We have had with us for the last hour and a half Arlan Brunson coming in to talk about theoathofoffice.com, but then springing some news on us that he is going to run for Senate against Orrin Hatch. And, boy, as I say that, we've got some video queued up that you and Orrin Hatch had a conversation.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to just play this so people can hear this. It's not long.
My DVD went to all the state delegates, the GOP party last year, about the oath of office. So I'm doing that again this year, just getting comments from all the candidates about the oath of office. So could you tell our viewers what the oath of office is?
To live up to the principles of the Constitution of our government. And, of course, we all take it when we get sworn in every time.
Okay. Now, is there a penalty for violating the oath?
Yeah, the election.
Article 6 says that all congressmen and senators are bound by the oath as well as having to affirm or swear by it. But
well, I feel bound by it, and I try to live up to it, and I think most try to live up to it. There are some who who don't take oaths too seriously, but I take them seriously.
Okay, and one more question. Ron Paul's mentioned that 1.5, something like that, trillion of the debt pie is fictitious because they created it out of thin air before they loaned it to Congress, that the Federal Reserve is a private corporation and they are loaning money they're creating out of thin air, and we have to pay that back. He says we shouldn't have to pay that back. What do you...
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, but did you see the color drain out of Orrin Hatch's face while you're asking that question? That is classic. That is awesome.
Your thoughts on that?
Well, Ron makes some good sense from time to time. He's a very fine man, and
well, I know you're supporting him. I think you voted to audit the Fed.
Well, that's right. I mean, he feels like we should. We do audit the Fed, but he feels it has to be a much greater audit than what goes on there. Ron's a fine guy, and he's carrying that particular load more than any other person.
Well, I know that Senator Bennett at the state GOP convention said that he had co-sponsored and voted to audit the Fed, but there were two bills. There was a bad bill and a good bill, and he voted for the bad bill, but you voted for the good.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I did.
Maybe I should work for you.
Yeah, you ought to. Well, get going here.
Thank you.
Well, it sounds like you're more interested in taking his job now, so which is a good thing.
Too. I'm for him and everyone.
Which is a good thing too. So people, if they want to learn more about you, if they want to email you, what's the best way for people to stay in contact?
Arlan at theoathofoffice.com. All the interviews are going to be up on theoathofoffice.com. Make sure there's a "the" in front of Oath of Office. Theoathofoffice.com or Arlan at theoathofoffice.com.
Okay, Arlan, ARLAN at theoathofoffice.com. Hey, thank you so much for coming in, educating people, taking the time. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.